Anime physiques are a great source of inspiration for the viewers. They represent to the viewer what an ideal should look like. They see the cool fights and are inspired to emulate that in some way. They want to emulate their favorite fighters. Now, they fight and they don't bodybuild, so it may be a bit weird that people choose to bodybuild instead of fight. I think that has to do with our innate misunderstanding of what really goes into a fight. People generally think that big muscles equals better fighter, but that's not necessarily true. But I think that what it is that bodybuilding signifies growth, and anime characters, they are constantly growing, so this is a very apt metaphor. So not only do we look like the anime characters, but we're also growing like the anime characters. Aristotle actually said that the purpose of art is not necessarily to express outward beauty, but it is to also signify inward significance. Shonen anime at their core are about development. Thus, the viewers adopt that ethos and channel it into something that they can actually tangibly do. Bodybuilding is just a very simple way to do that. And again, it's also kind of catchy that bodybuilding is, very relatively simple and easy to understand for us. You could learn how to fight, but the results aren't as tangible, which makes it not as immediately obvious to us. And I've talked about that in another video if you're interested. Another thing that helps anime physiques be so popular is not only that it's big buff characters fighting, but it's also big buff characters training. We'll talk about some of the pitfalls of that later on, but as a pure source of just raw motivation that you can channel into something, the training that they go through is very important, and you can see how it could develop a sort of bodybuilding mentality. It's the idea that, if I keep training, I can get stronger. And just as Goku keeps training and he gets stronger, Goku gets stronger to defeat his enemies, and I can get stronger to defeat my own enemies. Another part of it is also rivalries. We see Goku and Vegeta, and they are incredibly competitive. Similar to Naruto and Sasuke and like Deku and Bakugo, these characters are extremely competitive with each other. Being people of imitation, we will embody that sort of competitive drive and the competitive spirit that they have and hone it for ourselves. It doesn't matter if we have rivals or not, it's just the fact that we see these characters be competitive and we imitate them. That's why we become competitive and it's like we have a rivalry, but we don't actually have one. So, now that I've explained what makes anime characters so motivational to us, why do I believe that their workouts are problematic? In fact, in most scenarios, it's actually very bad if you emulate their workouts. So, to reiterate, the motivation is good, but the specific steps that you actually take in achieving what they have are usually bad. The anime workouts that you see online and that you see from the characters doing in the show are suboptimal at best, and at worst, they're actively detrimental. Actually, I should say at worst, it can have the ironic effect of making you have a permanent negative association with exercise. The problem with anime workouts is twofold. The first issue has to do with copying the anime workouts as they are presented in the anime, and the second has to do with people erroneously copying the specific actions that the characters do in hopes that that will get them to look like the character. So, first of all, the actions the anime characters actually go through are fictionalized, and the anime characters themselves are fictionalized. And 9 times out of 10, what they do is suboptimal. Rock Lee can do 2,000 push-ups a day, and that'll be good for him, but for you, it's probably not that good for you. Doing 2,000 push-ups a day will do nothing more, really, than just make you better at push-ups, because at that point, your chest isn't going to get any stronger, your chest isn't going to get any bigger, you're just going to become better at doing more push-ups. And look, if that's your goal, then great, but I think that most people, their end goal for fitness isn't just to do more of a specific exercise. If you want a bigger chest, focus on sets, reps in reserve, and all those other fitness terms. If you want to emulate these workouts with these insane rep ranges, with these insane rep numbers, it might actually have the unintended negative effect of actually overtraining you and, making your muscles smaller, because we're not actually anime characters, we're actually human beings, and it's possible for us to overtrain. So yes, focus on actually training properly with the other fitness terms that I was mentioning before. As a pure source of motivation, I can see why the creators would do this, right? Because the anime characters are becoming monsters. So, in a sense, making them train like monsters, it makes a lot of sense, right? If they were just doing regular, human numbers, it wouldn't be nearly as motivational as if they were doing just unbelievable, monstrous numbers. But yeah, don't do that. You're not a monster. You're just a human. It is kind of interesting, though, when some animes actually do recognize this, because in My Hero Academia specifically, I remember, All Might tells Deku that he's actually overtraining, which is a good caution. So, shoutouts to My Hero Academia for that. Now, I should say you can probably get away with a lot more training. You most certainly can get away with a lot more training as you become more advanced. So this critique specifically largely applies to beginners, but my point still stands. If you're a beginner especially, and you're doing those crazy numbers, you're just going to give yourself a negative association with fitness and you're not going to actually grow. On another level, there's this thing that's popularized in Naruto and Dragon Ball Z especially, and it's weighted clothing. Now, on some level, wearing weighted clothing is actually a pretty decent idea. Like, you know, if you're just walking around, having a weighted vest when you're walking around probably isn't going to hurt. It's not going to help that much, which I'll explain later on, but it's not going to hurt probably. But if you were to use these weighted accessories when you're doing things like combat especially, you're just going to completely mess up your bones, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, your muscles. It's just not going to go well. So do not do this at all. Do not use weighted clothing when you're fighting. So to quickly summarize, weighted clothing, if you are just walking around and doing like lightweight stuff, light exercise stuff, probably not going to help you really that much, but it's probably not going to hurt you. And using weighted accessories when you're doing martial arts training is going to be extremely bad for you, and you should just not do that at all. So I think that the perfect context to use weighted clothing and to use weighted accessories is to just use it when you're working out. So if you're doing leg lifts, then you can use weighted ankle weights to make the lift harder for you. If you're doing push-ups, then adding a weighted vest is a good idea to increase the intensity of the push-up. So that's just my quick guide to weighted clothing, and that's how you should use it, as opposed to the anime characters like Rock Lee, like Piccolo, like Vegeta, like Goku, who just have weighted clothing all throughout the day. If you're enjoying the video so far, consider buying my book, Muscular Christianity. It's a book about physical fitness, spirituality, and even a little bit about anime. And of course, this is a video about anime and fitness, so I think if you like this video, you're gonna like the book. And if you made it this far, it means you like the video. So with all of that being said, the link is in the description. The second problem with anime workouts that I was talking about before has to do with people emulating the actual actions that the characters do in the show that aren't necessarily training. So people will do things like mimic Zoro holding the sword in his mouth and try and get Guts' giant sword and try and swing that around and hope that it gets you a physique like Guts. That's just not going to happen. Swinging a sword all the time, even if it's like a small sword like Zoro's sword, relatively small sword like Zoro's sword, it's not going to get you huge. It might get you like a little bit stronger, but it's a very suboptimal use of time. And some things like holding weights in your mouth, that's just going to give you jaw problems. Don't do that. Doing something like Netero, where you pray 10,000 times a day, give gratitude, and then you punch, you're not going to look like Netero if you do that. Maybe your soul will look like Netero. You'll get a really strong soul if you give thanks 10,000 times a day. It's a very good spiritual thing that you should do, but in terms of getting you a good physique, no, it's not going to do anything. The way to actually get their physiques is to do specific resistance training protocols in a controlled environment. We should be focusing on the muscle groups that the characters have emphasized in their physique if we want their physique. So again, do not try and emulate what they're physically doing. These are fictional characters who have capacities that lie beyond the realm of us mortals. There's a reason that these feats resonate with us so much. They're completely unrealistic. Realistic workouts, aside from maybe calisthenics, which people even argue nowadays, how much muscle can you really build with just calisthenics, but so take away calisthenics, most exercises and most workouts will bore an untrained eye. So anime just does this thing where it spices it up by making it completely unrealistic. If you think about it literally, it's also an erroneous way of thinking. I mean, just because someone can do something doesn't mean that if you can do that thing as well, that you're gonna look exactly like them. It's sort of like saying, you know, if I bought a designer shirt, then am I gonna look exactly like the person who is endorsing, the celebrity that's endorsing the designer shirt? Obviously not. Will I even get the status, money, or anything else that they have? Obviously not. I mean, you're paying to get it, so obviously not. Did the celebrity use that specific designer clothing to get where he's at in terms of status and fame and money? Probably not. So in a similar way, just apply that metaphor here, and I mean, just because you can do the sword swings that Guts can do doesn't mean you're actually gonna look like him. So in short, these workouts look cool on paper, but in reality, they're subpar, if not actively bad. If you want these characters' physiques, you should do the tried and true classic exercises that have been tested and proven. If you want a more anime spice to it because you want it to be more interesting, a bit more interesting, then I do have some videos that you can look into. I've done on some characters like Baki and Goku. And if you're interested in that, you can check out my channel if you want. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.